Rome did not ask for volunteers. The assignment arrived the same way all assignments arrived, through the chain of command, translated into an order by the time it reached you, the specific bureaucratic transformation that converted an institutional requirement into a personal obligation. The century needed men for a duty. You were in the century. You were assigned. The duty was an execution, not a battle, not a raid, not any of the things that the training had prepared you for in the specific, visceral sense of preparation. The drill, the formation, the gladius work that had been drilled into your body until it happened below the level of thought. This was a different category of requirement. Rome needed someone to carry out a sentence that had already been determined by someone else, on a man who was already in custody, in a manner that the institution had already specified. You were the someone. Before this video is done, you are going to understand what it meant to be a Roman soldier assigned to execution duty. Not the condemned man's perspective, not the judge's perspective, but the perspective of the man who received the order and who the institution required to carry it out, regardless of whether he had been asked or wanted to, or understood why. Rome did not explain. Rome assigned. The Roman military used its soldiers as executioners as a matter of institutional routine. This is not a dramatic statement. This is the documented function of Roman military personnel in the administration of justice across the empire. The soldier who carried out the sentence of a military court was not a specialist, not a dedicated executioner with a specific title and a specific role, but a legionary assigned to the duty the way he was assigned to any other duty. Burial detail, construction work, guard rotation, execution. The legal framework for this was precise. Military courts had the authority to impose capital sentences on soldiers who had violated military law. The punishment for desertion was death. The punishment for sleeping on watch, the specific failure of the man who was supposed to be awake and wasn't, was death, because a sleeping sentry in a hostile camp was a gap through which an enemy could enter and kill everyone. The punishment for striking a superior officer was death. The punishment for cowardice in battle was death, administered by the specific mechanism of decimation, the selection of 1 man in 10 by lot, beaten to death by the 9 who had been passed over. The men who administered the decimation were the soldiers' own tent mates. This is the specific institutional logic of Roman military punishment that no other system in the ancient world replicated with the same thoroughness. The punishment was designed to be administered by the community that the violation had damaged. The soldier who had failed the formation was beaten by the formation. The soldier who had endangered the camp by sleeping was killed by the camp. The machine did not import external executioners. The machine used itself. You were the man who had not been selected by the lot. You were the 9, and the institution had decided that the act of executing the 1 was your responsibility, not because you had done anything wrong, but because the 1 had, and you were the mechanism through which the consequence was delivered. The decimation is the punishment that history remembers because its mathematics are striking. 1 in 10, chosen by lot, killed by the other 9. But the decimation was rare precisely because it was extreme. It was the response to collective failure of the most serious kind. An entire unit that had broken, an entire century that had run, a failure so total that the institution had decided individual accountability was insufficient and collective punishment was required. Most execution duty was not decimation. Most execution duty was a single man, a sentence from a court-martial, an order that arrived at the bottom of the chain of command and found the soldiers who were assigned that week to whatever the century's current duty roster put them on. The execution of a single condemned soldier was a procedure with specific steps. The condemned was brought to the place designated by the commanding officer. The soldiers assigned to the duty assembled. The sentence was read. Not for the benefit of the condemned, who already knew it, but for the record, because the Roman military maintained records of everything, including the deaths it administered. And then the soldiers carried out what the sentence specified. The man on the other end of the duty was not an enemy. He was a Roman soldier who had done something that the military law of Rome considered capital. He had eaten the same food as you. He had trained under the same system. He had sworn the same oath. He was, or had been, the same category of person that you were. Rome did not provide a mechanism for processing this. Rome provided the order. Outside the military courts, there was a different kind of execution duty. The Roman province of Judea in the 1st century AD was a place that Rome administered with the specific, frustrated attention of an institution that had acquired a province it did not fully understand. The Jewish population had a relationship with Roman authority that required constant management. The procurators who governed the province, Pontius Pilate, Felix Festus, the sequence of administrators who held the posting and found it more difficult than postings elsewhere, administered Roman law over a population whose own legal and religious traditions created friction with Roman governance at every level. Roman soldiers in Judea carried out crucifixions, not occasionally, routinely. Crucifixion was a Roman penalty reserved for the most serious offenses: treason, sedition, the crimes that Rome considered threats to the imperial order. And in a province that produced sedition the way the agricultural provinces produced grain, the soldiers who administered Roman justice in Judea carried out crucifixions with a regularity that would have been unusual elsewhere in the empire. The procedure was specific and required manpower. The condemned man carried the crossbeam, the patibulum, to the site of execution. The soldiers escorted him. At the site, the nailing or binding was performed by the soldiers assigned to the duty. The cross was raised. The guard stood until death occurred, which in the case of crucifixion could take hours or days, depending on the physical condition of the condemned and the manner in which the execution was carried out. The soldiers who stood that guard were doing their jobs. They had been assigned this duty the way they had been assigned any other. The ground they were standing on was the same ground they would stand on tomorrow for a different assignment. The man on the cross above them was a condemned man under Roman law, and their function was to ensure that the sentence was carried out as specified. This was not a question they were invited to engage with. Rome had determined the sentence. Rome had assigned the duty. The soldier's relationship to the question of whether the sentence was just was the same as the soldier's relationship to every other question that Rome had decided. It was not his question to answer. He stood his guard. He went back to the fort. Tomorrow there was a different assignment. What the guard duty at a crucifixion actually required was time. Crucifixion was a deliberately slow form of execution. The condemned could survive for hours or in some cases days, and the guard's function was to remain present for that entire duration, to prevent rescue, to prevent the condemned from being taken down before the sentence was complete, to be the institutional presence that Rome required whenever a sentence was being carried out in its name. You stood in the sun or in the rain, or in whatever the Judean weather was doing on the day you had drawn this assignment. The man above you was dying at whatever pace his body determined. The hours passed at the pace. Hours pass when there is nothing to do but stand and wait for a thing that is taking longer than you would prefer. This was also execution duty, not the dramatic moment of the sentence being carried out. The long, specific, institutional requirement of being present while the sentence completed itself. The guard that had no other function than to remain until the function was no longer necessary. Rome assigned this the same way it assigned everything. Duty roster, rotation. The men whose turn it was stood the guard. There was one more category of execution duty that the sources document in specific detail. The Gospel of Mark records it plainly. Herod sent a speculator, a soldier from the unit that served as royal bodyguard and executioner, to the prison where John the Baptist was held with the order to return with his head. The speculator went to the prison. He beheaded John the Baptist. He returned with the head on a platter. This was his assignment. He carried it out. The text records the fact with no comment on the soldier's experience of the assignment, because the soldier's experience of the assignment was not the point of the text and was not, in Roman military culture, considered a subject that required comment. He was a soldier. He had been given an order. He executed the order in the literal sense of the word. Rome did not select men for this duty based on their comfort with it. Rome selected men for this duty based on their availability and their rank in the rotational structure of military assignments. The speculator's name is not recorded. He went to the prison. He did what he had been sent to do. He returned. Rome's administrative records noted the execution as completed. The sentence had been carried out. The duty had been fulfilled. The speculator went back to his duties. This is the thing about being Rome's executioner that the history of Rome's victories never addresses. It was not a special assignment in the sense of being rare or extraordinary. It was a special assignment in the sense of being the specific institutional requirement that certain soldiers received on certain days. Assigned the way any duty was assigned, carried out with the efficiency that Roman military training produced in every task it applied to, and then filed in the records as completed. The machine required executioners. The machine used its soldiers. The soldiers were the machine. If this is the Rome you come back for, not the glory of the campaigns, but the truth of what the institution required from the men inside it on the days when the assignment was not a sword and a shield, but something else entirely. Hit that like button and subscribe to Legacy of Rome. Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, every week we go back into what it really cost to serve Rome.
Subscribe, and we'll keep making it.